Well, this is going to be a fun comment section. Batman, Cyborg, The Flash, Aquaman, and Wonder Woman must band together to save the world from a cataclysmic event brought by the bad guy named Steppenwolf. So the first thing I'm going to discuss here is my thoughts on the DCEU in general. Now, generally, the way that you start a cinematic universe is definitely not how the DCEU has been served up to us in general. Man of Steel, I thought, was absolutely phenomenal. Batman v Superman was just a complete shit show. And Suicide Squad was, oh god, that was just terrible. And then Wonder Woman, which I found was mediocre, although it was incredibly important. And now you have the Justice League. Now, the way I'm going to break down this review here is more so talk about the cast first, breaking it down by character. Please remember that this is a non-spoiler review, so for those who have seen it, please don't ruin anything in the comments section. I will, in fact, be doing a spoiler review. So the first character I'm going to discuss is Batman. Now, in my opinion, Ben Affleck is the best Batman we've had, as well as the best Bruce Wayne that we've had also. Now, coming off of the events of Batman v Superman, you can see that he really is struggling to cope with the loss and guilt of everything that happened in that movie. But throughout the film, that you can see his character arc kind of progress. And to be honest, if Ben Affleck does kind of leave the DCEU, as previously stated by him and several other sources, it would, in my opinion, be a real shame, because this is the first time we actually see him, in my opinion, come to the full expectation of what the character should be. So the next character I'm going to discuss here is Wonder Woman. Now, to be fair, I wasn't a very big fan of her movie. I thought it was incredibly mediocre. As important as it was, I just didn't think it was actually a very well-made film. Here though, Gal Gadot really shines, kind of alternating between warrior and more of a nurturing type. She really is the glue that holds the team together that Bruce is forming, and to be honest, I'm actually really looking forward to Wonder Woman 2, now seeing her in this film. Ezra Miller as the Flash. It didn't connect with me. For me, it highlighted a lot of the issues with having Joss Whedon come in. Now, the Flash is a very jovial and a very funny character, but here, he just cracked too many jokes when really they needed to go for a little bit more of that serious tone. But I'll get to the tone when I discuss issues with the film. For me, I just didn't personally like as many jokes, and a lot of them didn't really land. Aquaman. Now, I feel as though Jason Momoa as Aquaman really is the breakout star in this film. He was very dude bro, and in saying that, he did have one slightly softer moment, which was once again undercut with a joke. They're really going for the Marvel format here. Ray Fisher as Cyborg. Now, this is one character I think they completely forgot to try to at least have some kind of character arc here. They did have some form of an arc, but it was very surface level, and it didn't kind of get into the nitty gritty, but I think that came down to the time constraints. Ray Fisher did a really good job in the role, but unfortunately he really wasn't given much other than kind of being a Deus Ex Machina. Lois Lane and Martha Kent. I don't know why they just can't get Lois right. Here, it was incredibly offensive on how they treated the Lois character. A lot of her dialogue was incredibly clunky, but in saying that, a lot of the dialogue in this film was clunky as well. Amy Adams was really, really trying, but I felt as though she wasn't given nearly enough of what you'd kind of expect Amy Adams to do, and it did garner a lot of unintentional laughs in the cinema, especially one terribly, terribly offensive line about her being thirsty. It was just terrible. Now, I can't really say Martha without instantly thinking of BVS, Batman saying, "Why did you say that name?" whenever anyone says Martha, but Diane Lane here is just so perfect. You know, she could have played the Martha character almost like an Aunt May type, where, you know, she's all old and needs glasses, but really she was just so maternal, and she was incredibly warm. And even though she's not in it that much, I think that you really did feel the weight of everything that happened in BVS. Next up is Danny Elfman doing the score. God, did he shit the bed. It was incredibly vague. I didn't feel any emotional impact, but there was one time in the film that they did use the Hans Zimmer Man of Steel theme, and I had a smile on my face from ear to ear. I love the Man of Steel soundtrack. I listen to it pretty much daily along with the Lord of the Rings soundtrack, and to completely get rid of Hans Zimmer was a huge letdown, I think, for the film, because really, the soundtrack in the DCEU really has been the heartbeat and the pulse of the films, and to completely go away with the themes that you've already previously set up. I mean, I understand he was doing homages to the original Superman and the original Batman, but remember, we're not in them anymore. This is a DCEU cinematic universe, and to not have an overarching theme, it's felt incredibly disconnected, and I'm incredibly disappointed. This was a very Marvel film in terms of tone. They still had slight little salt-based sprinkles of the original DCEU tone, but you can see Joss Whedon really tried to fix it in editing and reboots and try to make it a little bit more family-friendly. The issue with that is that, number one, you completely disregard everything that happened in the DCEU prior. Number two, when you're setting up a villain as bad as Steppenwolf, and I don't mean bad like he's a big bad guy, I mean he was just a complete waste of space. I didn't care. But when you are setting up a tone of this world-ending destruction, constantly jumping the line between serious, funny, what they actually did was they completely cut the emotional impact of everything that was happening, because of course they would do the Marvel format, which is undercut it with a joke. And although sometimes the jokes landed, a lot of the times they didn't. And it really it had this sense of disengagement for us as the audience, or me personally as the audience. I can't speak for everyone else that was in the movie. But I just found it was just very, very rushed. Very much like the tone, the editing here is incredibly lackluster. You can definitely see where they went in for reshoots, and it really did kind of impact the amount of enjoyment that I was having in the film, because a lot of these reshoots versus the original footage were just so spliced together and incredibly noticeable. From close to a $300 million budget, I just kind of expect a little bit more. This film has more issues than you can throw a parademon at, but in saying that, I enjoyed myself immensely. I'm incredibly happy to announce that this is event filmmaking at its finest. I definitely recommend seeing the film in the biggest screen possible with the loudest sound system possible, but in saying that, don't worry about 3D. For me, the CGI was just a little bit too dark, and it did limit the scope of the film in general. Thank you so much for checking out my review of Justice League. Remember, I will be doing a spoiler review, so if you have seen the film, be sure to check that out. But of course, if you like this video and want to see more, please click here to see more. Thanks for watching. Bye.